Hey, this is Madeline Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio. Let's start off with this story from Spaces, from the Twitter Spaces account that was tweeted out during the week, Madeline. This is something that I think that you had actually experienced. Well, we'd experienced it in All Things Audio a few weeks ago, hadn't we? It was having this kind of choppy audio for the speakers. Is that the issue that they're referring to in this tweet?
I imagine that's what they were talking about. This tweet came out yesterday, and I've reported it multiple times. I'm sure other people have too, because other people have complained about it, that they're now addressing it, saying we've received reports that audio has been choppy or dropping altogether for some speakers, and that they've implemented a fix. So that's great. Hopefully we're not going to see that continue on. So time will tell for sure, but we definitely wanted to point that out because I've known people that were having this issue. I've had it happen. So it's nice to know that they're saying there's been a fix. And what's really great to notice in this tweet is that they end it with the hashtag spacebugs. And that's just a reminder for everybody. If you have any issues with spaces and you want to let the team know, do your tweet and put #spacebugs in it, because they do actively monitor. A lot of times people just tweet at Twitter Spaces, which I also think you should do, but I think you'll get a faster response when you put that hashtag in, because I know the Twitter Spaces Twitter handle, there's a lot going on there, and they may not get to it as quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I know that this was definitely something that really distracted me a couple of weeks ago in the All Things Audio space. I could hardly hear what you were saying by the end of the hour that we'd had together, and that made it quite difficult because, of course, All Things Audio is all about us two chatting to each other and then later on chatting to people that are inside our space. And if I couldn't hear you clearly, I was unsure whether you were still talking and everyone else could hear you. I think, in fact, the listeners could hear you. And it was just the fact that I had a microphone that meant that on the speakers stage, if you like, there was this glitch. So, and actually today you do sound so much better. I can hear you crystal clear, every word that you're saying. But yeah, it had got quite distracting and quite difficult. I mean, even to the point that I sort of stopped in the middle. I think it might have even been last week and said, Madeline, I can't hear you properly. This is crazy. And you explained that you'd had this bug. So yeah, I think it's quite important that they've got to that and made an update for it. It obviously needed a patch somewhere, and it wasn't just us that was experiencing it. So yeah, good that they're on this. And yeah, the Spaces Bugs tag is definitely one to use. They also use Spaces Research in the early days. I don't know if that one's still going as well.
Yes, that one is for feedback. So they kind of broke it down between the two hashtags. Spaces Research hashtag is when you just want to share feedback versus Spaces Bugs when you're actually having issues.
Ah, I see. Yeah, clever. That's clever, because then they know what they're looking for then, don't they? I mean, they must get tons of people using these hashtags, so it's good to kind of filter it out in that way. Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear there's a fix. Now let's move on and talk about the new feature, which I can talk about this week.
I know, the Spaces clips. And, we talked about it last week, and I had tried it out, and it was very clunky. And then we talked last week about how the icon made no sense. They used the retweet icon when you're listening to a live room. Not only a small group of us are able to test it, so not everyone, you may not see it yet, but when you're in a live room in Spaces and you're on mobile and there's a screenshot in this tweet I just put in the nest that shows it, thanks to Hosaline, and they changed it to a scissors, and that's so much better. Isn't that what you were recommending last week?
Yeah.
Isn't that what you had said was, so see, they were listening. Maybe they listened to our podcast and they're like, wow, Suze has a great idea. Let's change it to the scissors. Makes perfect sense. So I'm so glad they did this.
Or maybe it's just way more intuitive that they use the scissors really to suggest that we're going to clip something for it. But yeah, it's much better to see it there. This time last week, I couldn't see it. It was still very much in small beta mode. I'm unsure whether or not it's rolled out further. I can see it and I have used it this week and I do have comments. I don't know whether or not it's available for everyone on iOS now, and I don't think it's available on Android just yet, which is one of those kind of disappointing moments again when not everyone can get hold of the new feature. I love the fact that we've got it and we've got the ability to do it. My goodness, there's a knack to making sure you capture the right bit of audio that you really want to grab.
Yeah, it's not easy. I've experimented with it so much. And my assumption, and tell me what your thoughts are. My assumption was when I'm trying to make the clip, it'll start when I tap on it and go, you can do up to 30 seconds and it'll be moving forward. So I complained about this, and one of the engineers at Twitter got back to me and says, no, it's the other way around. Like when you've heard like those 30 seconds, then you press it and it's going to take the previous 30 seconds, which I said to them, you'll need to put instructions. It needs to say that the first time, because I would have never thought that's what I'm supposed to do. Like, because what if you're hearing a great nugget of information? Well, then how do you know 30 seconds? Like, how do you know when to press the button to start your clip?
Yeah.
So they got a lot of work to do on this.
So I was expecting it to do the previous 30 seconds, but only because I've used the clip feature on Clubhouse, and that's how that works.
Okay. Right. Gotcha. Okay.
So I kind of knew that I was waiting to hear something and then hitting it as soon as I thought, yeah, that was great. Understanding that when I hit the button, that's when my clip's going to stop. And in fact, that's how I tweeted one out just before this space started. And that's how I knew what part of the space from last week I wanted to clip. And I found it quite quickly. And I knew when I said that Spotify Live moment and I hit the button that it would take the 30 seconds before. But that's not completely intuitive to everyone. And it's, as I say, only because I've been over on Clubhouse and done it over there. But the other thing that I've found quite confusing is that then once I tweeted that out, it gives you the card and you've got like your waveform and your captions. And then underneath it, you hit what you think is going to play the audio out. And that actually takes you to the full replay of the space.
Right. It's very confusing. I'm going to put the tweet you just posted earlier of a clip you did. I'm going to put it in the nest. And yes, so a lot of problems with this. So number one, if you look at this tweet, so if you look in the nest that I just put up, it's a tweet that Suze did 26 minutes ago. She pulled a clip from last week's episode. And it was done very well, Suze. You did a great job. But here's the problem. If you look at it on desktop, it just looks like a replay. You just can replay the whole room from last week. It will not play the clip. But then here's the big problem. So you go on to mobile, and I believe it's just iOS only right now, right? Isn't that right?
Yeah, just iOS.
So if you're on iOS, so when I look at this tweet, here's the big problem, is that you're inclined to tap where it says play recording. That makes sense, right? But if you press that, that's to play the whole room, the whole recorded room from before. Whereas instead, and this is not noticeable, in the card is kind of a purple. It's not purple. It's kind of like I don't even know what this color, what would you call this color, Suze? I don't even know what to call this color because it's not quite purple. It's a little
sort of a pinky burgundy kind of a colour. But the bit that you're looking for is the tiny weeny little speaker icon in the top right-hand corner next to the countdown. That is where you want to hit to hear the audio for the actual clip. It's very strange.
Yeah, I think what they need to do, and maybe they're listening to this, so Twitter Spaces, here's what we want you to do. Take out where it says play recording, or just make that what you press to unmute it. Come up with a better way because it's very confusing. I do like they have the captions, so that's good. It's not perfect, but it does the job. But yeah, it's not obvious that you have to tap that little tiny black button to unmute it because what it's doing is playing it automatically, and that's why you see the text, the captions moving. And you're inclined to press play recording, but that just takes you to the whole entire recording of the episode, of that room and spaces. So they got a lot of work to do on this, that's for sure.
I think it's just trying to do too many things. Like, I understand that as hosts, obviously, we're trying to drive people back to listen to the replay, to understand where that clip has come from, to put that into context of whatever it was we were talking about during the space. So I can kind of see where they're coming from. And potentially, as we've said, it's in beta, it's rolling out slowly, not everybody's got it. They're probably waiting for feedback just like this. They've literally thrown everything at it and gone, right, you can have the lot. You can have the clip, the captions, the waveform, you can have the countdown timer, and you can also have a button that links you back to your replay. And I would imagine they're waiting for us all to go, whoa, that's too much, it's too confusing, or we like this bit but not that bit. And as we've said, even at the top of this, talking about the different hashtags that they've set up in order to get the feedback, it's important to them to hear how people are using it. I think this card's trying to do too much, and I think that's the feedback they're going to get. And I would expect that they're going to slim it down in some way, so that it just does one thing and does one thing really well.
Yeah. Great thoughts. And there's so much more with Twitter Spaces this week. We've talked about how they're working on adding more analytics, and Hoseline put together this really great tweet. He says it's a small test group with this new Spaces stats. I haven't noticed it yet, but if you're hosting a room, you may notice right when you're ready to close out that there'll be something that pops up that says view stats from your space. And it's just some newer enhanced stats, which, we're all for. We want to get more stats from our room. So exciting to see that they're working really hard on that. So any thoughts that you have on getting more stats?
Yeah, so I've actually seen this. I went back to our replay from last week and I can see the stats, the extended stats that they've just brought in on that space, although it did take quite a lot of tapping to try and get it to actually click through to the stats screen. I'm not quite sure why that wasn't working quite as seamlessly as I was expecting it to. But yeah, it does give you those different stats that are shown there, the duration of the space, how many speakers you had, how many replay listens, how many live listens in there. It's the basic stats that we've been after, the basic analytics. I'd really like that as well to appear in the analytics page on Twitter, which I do use on the desktop quite often to go back. I like to see, how much engagement my tweets have got, whether it was a picture tweet or a video or audio or whatever it was. I'd quite like that to be integrated over there as well. I get that all of this has been mobile first, so they're obviously focusing on the mobile app first of all. And yeah, it's a great start, and I hope there's more.
Yeah, I do too. Another interesting, we got so many tweets we're sharing from Hoseline because he just has been killing it. He's been uncovering so many things. And so back to the new clips feature, he has found a really interesting way to go discover people that are posting these Spaces clips. And it's a matter of taking this string of code and copying and pasting it into the search. So like when you're on desktop, at the top right, you see search Twitter and you can type in keywords. What you would do is put in what this says, URL:/spaces space URL:/clip ID. And it's going to go and look because that's the string of code that will be in a tweet that has a clip. So that's super interesting. I'm sure Twitter is working on a way for us to easily find clips and not have to resort to doing this, that there'll be some discoverability. We know that they're adding more, they got a newer icon, which we're going to talk about. So the icon looks different now on mobile when you go into Spaces. They're talking about adding podcasts. So I feel like so much more is coming where we'll be able to get, go into this one section, get the stats, see rooms that are going on live, being able to see Spaces clips in there, like just a whole bunch of things. Don't you think that's where this is all going? Just more discoverability across the board?
Yeah, it's got to be. And I think discoverability has always been an issue. It's something we talk about every single week. Certainly this, feeds into people being able to find more spaces, find the content that's being created from them and then feed back into, who's creating them, follow those people so that you can then join those spaces when they go live again. But they really need just an overhaul of discoverability tab. We need a proper kind of dashboard where we can see things properly, search for things properly. But, all in time, and every little step, I hope, is walking towards that beautiful discoverability landscape that I dream of.
I think it is. And then you did a really great screenshot showing this new microphone icon that we were just talking about before for the new Spaces tab. And I like this icon so much. I think this is really more fitting, and instead of the way they had the little circles in the shape of a diamond, I think this is much better. And I love that. And you and I both have iOS. We have iPhone, so we know for sure iPhones have it. Not 100% sure on Android yet. Sometimes things come out for iPhone users first. But what's great about this is when you're at your navigation at the bottom on mobile, that's the icon you now see for the Spaces tab. And then when you are starting a room, when you go to compose a tweet, that's what the icon looks like now. So what are your thoughts, Suze? Because I think it's beautiful. I really like that they rebranded it.
Yeah, I mean, my sources tell me that it's not on Android just yet. So it is just an iOS update for now with this new icon. I think this feeds neatly into what we were talking about a few weeks ago when there was kind of lots of discussion around the podcasts tab. Effectively, this is what's been uncovered, I think. This is what's been seen in that reverse engineering, is that this icon has changed to a microphone, which suggests more than just Spaces. You know, Spaces had its three little spacey dots. That's now gone with, no mention really of where it's gone. But this icon has appeared in its place, and people do generally consider a microphone icon to be linked more to podcasts and broader audio content than just social audio. So I think when we were discussing that, one of the tweets that we uncovered around the podcast tab was from C at Work, from Twitter, from the product team, who quite pointedly said, that this is all an internal test and there's no plans for podcasts to be zipped into anything just yet. And potentially, I think that's because they've changed the icon, and yes, it makes people think of podcasts, but potentially they're not ready for that podcast element to be bolted on. I still think we are going to see podcasts on Twitter at some point, for all the reasons that I've mentioned in weeks gone by, for the different acquisitions that they've got in terms of podcast platforms, and for the way in which they are building up Spaces in terms of replays and people being able to create their own podcast content from these social audio spaces. So, but really interesting to see that switch. And, it really just does feed into that intuitive understanding that people think of when they think of audio and podcasts. It's a microphone icon. It's great.
Yeah, it makes much more sense. So I'm really thrilled that they changed it. Now we got Clubhouse news. We had lots to talk about with Twitter Spaces today, but now we're going to switch gears and talk about Clubhouse. And, since you're more well-versed in Clubhouse, I'll let you take the reins on this. I'll just put the tweets into the nest.
Okay, well, I've got to thank Morgan for this one. He brought my attention to this earlier on. So Clubhouse have launched protected profiles, and there's a great blog attached to this. So basically, they've created these protected profiles so that people have got more control over who can see them while they're on Clubhouse. They've also done it very much in response to the war in Ukraine, and are really reaching out and trying to make sure that people feel safe and are aware of what audio content can be used for, how it can be used both in a way that you would be aware of and perhaps also not aware of. And this blog really outlines some great tips for staying safe on social audio. But just to go back to the actual new feature, which is this protected profile setting. It's something that as a user, you can go into your settings on Clubhouse and you can toggle on and off. So you can toggle on this protected profile, and it basically allows you to approve your followers so that you know who it is that's following you. And only your followers are going to be able to see the rooms and the clubs and the replays on your profile. And they also say it will make you just less visible on Clubhouse generally. So users you haven't approved as followers won't be able to know when you're online, and Clubhouse won't be recommending you to people you don't know, so that you don't end up with followers, people that you don't know. Things like your name, your username, your bio, any linked social handles will still be available, but you can always block users, which is something that you could always do over there anyway. As I say, I think it's really useful to read through these tips for staying safe on social audio that they've added into the blog at the end. They say they've worked with experts at Witness, and it's really It's obvious stuff, but it's also stuff that when you're having a conversation live on a social audio platform isn't necessarily front of mind. Things like, being careful of what you say, make sure that you're not kind of letting your guard down too much. You might be giving away personal information without really realising it. You might be giving away your location, where you are, your birthday, things like that. Be mindful of who you're connecting with. As it says in this blog, it is really exciting to meet new people who are interested in the same things as you and to build up those relationships. But you also have to be really aware of who those people are and really kind of just take a moment to weigh up whether or not accepting a request to connect with someone is really a good move. And thinking about the fact that the audio is recorded and not just on the platform. Like, the audio can be recorded on both Spaces and Clubhouse now, as we know. We've really enjoyed having the replays feature, but that does mean that it does live on. And even as hosts, you and I, Madeline, don't really have any say over what happens to that. People can retweet it. People can most certainly find ways to re-record it and keep their own copy of it. And then they can do whatever they want with it. It's very, very difficult to police any of that audio content once it's out there. So thinking about what you're saying on there, thinking about the fact that it might be recorded, understanding that your voice identifies you. Everybody's voice is unique to themselves and is an identifier in some way. So, yeah, it's come out of the Ukraine and Russia, the usage that people have had on social audio during this terrible time. But I really feel like these are guidelines that everybody should be aware of and be thinking of when they're on social audio, whether it's here on Spaces, there on Clubhouse, or over on Spotify Live when that goes live. Wherever you are, thinking about how to stay safe. But if you're over on Clubhouse at the moment, they have got this protected profile setting. So check it out if that's something that you feel would be useful to you.
Yeah, I think it's great that they're offering this and they're making it so simple, just a toggle switch on mobile. So that's excellent. Thanks for sharing all that. And that article is really good. I do recommend everybody check it out. And then also, what is this games rooms? What is going on also with Clubhouse? Because I'm not familiar with this, so I'd like to hear more.
Yeah. So this is another one from Alessandro Paluzzi, who's one of our reverse engineering wizards, tweeted out during the week that the games section had been added to the starter room menu over on Clubhouse. This is kind of all in the background, as I say, all reverse engineered, so kind of not quite there yet. Not very much more information than that, really. I did find an article on techdata.net, which said similar. It's been Clubhouse is seen testing a new game room support in its app, but what's inside it and to whom this support is currently available is still unknown. That's a direct quote from this article from them. So yeah, I guess it's another way of keeping people on the platform for longer, which is what we've talked about in recent weeks as well. It's interesting to see that in this article, right near the bottom, it says, it should be noted that Clubhouse is only being used aggressively by business people and activists currently for reaching their followers and clearing their doubts. I mean, that's a very stark sentence just there, isn't it? I mean, what a statement. I'm not too sure that it is only being used by those people, but they believe that, introducing a feature like games will basically get more people onto the platform that perhaps have left it since the initial flurry of interest in it during the pandemic. And if there are games on there, people are more likely to stick around, interact with one another and stay there for longer session times. So yeah, interesting to see whether that one becomes reality and what those games might be behind it.
Yeah, it's very interesting for sure. And I'm definitely eager to see how that's all going to pan out. And then surprisingly, we have social audio news for Instagram, which rarely happens. Interesting that they're working. This is another one of those reverse engineer things from Alessandro that he found, that they're working on the ability to reply to stories with voice messages. That is intriguing. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it really is. And I had a quick go at wondering what this might be like in my tweet. So I sort of said, this could be anything. Essentially, the screenshot from Alessandro shows the microphone icon within the send message bubble. So it's the similar kind of thing if you were going to send a WhatsApp voice note, or over on LinkedIn, you've got the little microphone bubble to record a quick message. I wonder whether or not it might be a bit Snapchat-esque. So, you could hit the microphone button and give a quick fire reply to someone's story, but it might, like the story, disappear quickly, either within 24 hours or maybe even sooner. Maybe as soon as you've listened to it, that's it, it's gone and done. Might it be threadable? Might it become like one of those voice note conversations in WhatsApp where, you can send your message to whoever's created the content, they can then reply back and you can go to and fro. Might you be able to choose to integrate it into your content? So if it's a direct message that's kind of behind the scenes, is it something that you could then share back to your stories or to your grid in some way, in a kind of clips-esque manner? I don't know. But, if you've put out something, a piece of content on stories, and someone comes back and says how great it is or whatever, it might be quite nice to share that bit of audio content so other people that are following you can hear it. I was kind of letting my imagination go wild and think about what that might look like for Instagram and the sort of thing that they might be thinking about for it. But yeah, very interesting one, and not a platform I was kind of expecting to come up with anything audio-wise at the moment. They've got Reels, they use music and different things over there in different ways, but in terms of actual voice usage, it's an exciting one. See what happens.
It is exciting. Well, we know voice is powerful. And I think this is interesting that if I'm looking at somebody's story and instead of hitting emoji or typing something, which we know goes into their DMs, that's why it says send message, that I could have that ability to actually just take 5 seconds and say something and they hear my voice. And it's what I've always talked about over the years with video replies on Twitter. That is so powerful to reply to people with a quick little snippet of video. So like if you tweeted me and I just do a quick reply, hey, thank you so much, I really appreciate it. That's so powerful. But then just have the audio only, still powerful. So I really like this idea and looking forward to seeing what direction it's going to go in. I think all your ideas for this are excellent. And maybe they'll listen to this. And just like we know Twitter was listening to us, at least we think they are, or we'll pretend they are. Maybe Instagram's listening too, and they'll take note of your wonderful ideas, Suze.
Who knows?
And then last week, you had answered a question from Michael DeGroot because he couldn't be here. And then again this week, he can't make it here live. So he tweeted you. And this is actually great for our listeners to know. If you have like some pressing question that you want us to go, get our thoughts or go research and get some info for you, this is an excellent idea. You can't make it here live to ask the question. Go ahead and tweet it to both of us or one of us. And Suze, you were so great in replying. He tweeted you this today and you turned around and replied very quickly to him with your response. So I'll let you take this part over and talk about his question and your response.
Yeah, sure. So Michael was basically asking about the social audio app Wisdom, which is one that I've heard of and I have downloaded and I've got on my phone and have been lurking, I think is what I've described myself as. I've been lurking on Wisdom. I haven't posted anything over there yet, but I've certainly listened to quite a lot over there. Anyway, his question, he said, as a podcaster, I received a personal email inviting me to join the platform. It allows you to add your podcast. Now, I got that email as well. And as I already had my profile over there, I did hop across and I have put the All Things Audio podcast links into the little box and uploaded our image. And it looks quite nice on my profile page now. It kind of pops up quite nicely. I'll take a screenshot after this actually and tweet it out so that we can kind of share it on the All Things Audio hashtag. So yeah, I got that email as well. I think it really showed for me a bit of a change of direction for Wisdom, which I had understood was sort of positioning itself as the platform for experts. So, that their icon is great. It's Einstein with headphones on a rainbow background. What's not to love? It's basically, I thought, positioning itself for kind of business people or, people that have got a lot of knowledge about a certain industry or topic. And that was sort of their niche. Whereas sending out these emails to podcasters is kind of taking I feel, a bit of a different direction. And for me, I feel like potentially it's lining itself up against Racket, which has recently gone mobile only. This is another one that we have spoken about in the past. Used to be the desktop studio, which I absolutely loved, gave you 9 minutes to talk about your own topic, whatever that might be. They've now ditched the desktop. They're now gone all in on mobile. And I think what they're finding, their content for a while actually went down one direction where, you know, if you wanted stand-up comedians or you wanted a laugh or you wanted to hear a thought of the day, then I would have said that definitely Racket was the place to go. But in recent weeks, there's definitely an influx of podcasters heading over there to promote their podcast, whether that is playing some audio from their podcast into Racket so that it then appears as a post for people to respond to, or whether it's actually recording additional content to explain to people what their podcast is about and then call to action, go and listen to my podcast. Now, if you've got Racket doing that and that's on mobile, and Wisdom was already a mobile app, perhaps looking in another direction, but seeing that a competitor is gaining ground with podcasters, then it stands to reason, really, that they might try and make a play for that audience as well. So really interesting to see the two. Racket is one that I've been on more recently than Wisdom, but certainly, in the last couple of days, I'd sort of noticed this difference. And having had this personal email, it's very, very nice. They name check your podcast, they name check you. You know, they've obviously got access to the RSS feed emails, and they've sent all this information out. But it'll be good to see, you know, where they both head. As we've always said, all of these different platforms kind of popped up within weeks of each other, and we're all still finding our feet and finding our niche. And it's great to see these different plays and different ways that people are using it. So that was my answer, both on Twitter for Michael and here today as well for all things audio. But I'd love to hear from anyone who's used either of the apps, who are regular users of them. As I say, I'm more lurking on them. I'm not creating content on either of them at the moment because I'm concentrating heavily on Twitter Spaces, as you can imagine. But certainly Racket would be my next go-to.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure. There's so many of these apps popping up now, but Wisdom, I find it to be really interesting. I haven't ventured into it yet, but just reading their website and what all it does is fascinating for sure.
I just think, you know, there's so many different ways. You would never have imagined how many different ways people would think about positioning these social audio, whether it's having, you know, conversations between just two people, whether it's having the option to have lots of people having a conversation like over here on Twitter Spaces, whether it's literally putting a thought leader in the position of being able to say what they like, whether it's something like Soundwave, where it is essentially like your WhatsApp voice messages, but for everybody on the platform, where, you know, you hear someone's nugget of information, you can literally reply back and forth on that thread. You know, there are lots of different ways that these apps are doing these things. And when people ask, and I think actually Michael's question before was, you know, which of these social audio apps is the one to go for? And as I've said, they all do different things and they've all got different audiences and they're all trying to find a different niche. So it's about understanding why you want to create social audio, finding out where your audience is, and then kind of going all in on where that might be. And it might actually take a while to check out all of the different ones and see which one really suits you. Where do you feel most comfortable? That's where you're going to create the best content.
Yeah, well said. And yeah, it's always best to just try these different ones and see what resonates with you the most. And hello, Jennifer.
Hello. So glad I could fit this in, because I'm always usually doing other things when you guys have this. So when I was like, oh, I can join, I can listen.
Yay.
I know, it's exciting. So the one thing, and I may have missed this because I kind of came in part way, but did you all talk about Amazon AMP yet?
We did a few weeks ago, right, Suze? A week or two ago? Recently.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, I believe, when it first kind of landed. Let me see. It's episode 39. So today is episode 42. So it was the 9th of March.
Oh, wow.
So that
it's
one
been a while. Okay.
may well still be, it may well still be live as a replay, but we did chat about it. And it was kind of all over to Madeline because it's all US only at the moment. So I'm sadly sat over here watching with tears in my eyes because I'd love to have a go. But yeah, from what I've heard, it's going quite well. Have you managed to try it out, Jennifer?
I did. I was a guest on one show. Somebody wanted to test it out and said, would you join me to test it? I'm like, sure, let's see what it is. And I wasn't, it's kind of like that, oh, another social audio app kind of vibe that I had. But once I experienced it, I had a totally different mindset on it because, well, number one, the music that the host picked was right up my alley, Earth, Wind and Fire, Casey and the Sunshine Band, that kind of vibe for the music. But it was kind of a nice shift to have a topic of discussion and have several of us speaking on the topic of discussion, but then having the musical break to kind of, move a little bit in your seat or stand up and move and then go right back into the discussion. I don't think it's my kind of vibe of being a host, but I really did enjoy being a guest, and I think I'd probably be more as a listener than hosting. I don't know if I could really do the music and the content in the way that this host did a really good job. It was actually Mark. Can't think of what his last name is, but Mark. It's going to come to me as soon as I'm done talking. But I kind of wanted to see because it's a different vibe. So my question really is, if you're a host who's really successful on Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse or Wisdom or insert other thing here, does Amazon Amp's vibe, does that fit or is it just something completely different? Because that's kind of how I'm perceiving it. But I'm super curious on what others' experiences are or what their take is on this.
I've actually heard a little bit of backlash from kind of radio presenters and broadcasters over here who, as I say, like the UK, we don't have a chance to play with it at the moment. But there's a bit of, not everyone can be a radio host. Not everyone can line up the content and know what to say and all of that kind of thing. And I think you're right. I think it is a skill. But I also think who'd have thought that we could run Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse and all the rest of it, and people do. I think in terms of picking the right songs and the playlists and things, I think that does take thought, but then doesn't any content that you want to make good and make fly? Me and Madeline spend time picking out the different things we're going to talk about. That time would just be spent picking out what songs fit well with the content on the topic of conversation, etc., over on Amazon Amp. So, once again, I feel like it won't be for everybody. It won't be necessarily for everyone that runs a Twitter space or a Clubhouse room, but there will be people that will absolutely fly over there playing, being presenters. And more likely, I as a kid, I used to create my own radio station with a double tape deck, recording various things, talking to myself, interviewing my friends, and this is just potentially 2022's version of that, and I'm sure there will be people that will rise up through the ranks, having started on somewhere like Twitter Spaces or on Amazon, that will become figures that we will hear on proper broadcasting platforms. So personally, I think anything that gives you a good experience and a way to build something new for yourself has got to be a good thing. What do you think, Madeline?
Yeah, for sure. I found the tweet from earlier this month when we did talk about it here in All Things Audio. And I was trying it out because I had access to it. I was bummed that Suze couldn't. But I found it to be very interesting. And I think it's interesting that you can bring music and voice together in one app like this and have that ability to play all kinds of music. And because it's powered by Amazon, of course, they've got the licensing agreements in place. And the screenshots I have in this tweet, I was just trying to, find a room and listen in and see. And it was very new at the time, earlier in the month. And it was a support group. It was employees from the AMP app. And they were playing music and talking. And at one point, they stopped talking and played a Rick James song, Super Freak. And I just had to capture that in these screenshots because I found it to be intriguing. And I love that so many different social audio apps are coming about, and they're all different. They're all unique. And it's a matter of finding what speaks to you, what resonates with you. And, when we hear about these, Suze definitely more than me, but we try to, download the apps and play with it and get a feel for it and see, is this something I should add as something else for me to be doing or add it as part of my online marketing? I mean, the reason why I host and co-host 3 different rooms and spaces each week is it all ties into marketing me as my brand overall as Madeline Sklar. And so things like this can be really helpful when you're your own personal brand or even for the company that, maybe you have your own brand, a big company, or you work for one, and just so much happening. I feel like social audio has exploded for these past 2 years now, really since the pandemic started. Everybody staying indoors initially, what was there to do? And then, Clubhouse emerged as the start of this whole wave of social audio. So I find this AMP one super interesting for sure.
Thank you both for sharing your thoughts on it because it is something that I think can be very special, but I also think because of the music aspect that it has to fit you. And I feel a lot of times we feel a lot of pressure about all the shiny new things. And I felt for me, this was something I'm like, I'm going to enjoy this as either if somebody wants me to be a guest, I'm happy to do that. And I'm going to enjoy this as a listener. And I did not feel the overwhelming pressure that I needed to jump in here and really, plant a flag and become someone in that space. And I think giving myself that permission was a nice thing.
Yeah, definitely. I see Michael has his hand raised. Michael, did you have something to add to that?
Hi, yeah, thank you. And you always host a great space. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I kind of wonder if social audio is becoming another category of creator for creators online. You had like Twitch for live streaming for games. You have YouTube Live and YouTube for produced videos. It used to be that if you want to broadcast quality produced videos, you had to watch TV. Now anybody can produce it. And I kind of wonder if social audio is becoming another category of online creators where you can use AMP or Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces or whatever to create your own show, and you will grow a following and become kind of an online celebrity for audio. And so, like, we're already seeing it on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has its social audio product, and I know of two people who have started a weekday show at the same time every day, Monday through Friday. It's a fantastic show. They both have roadcasters, and I have a feeling that their audience is just going to explode once people on LinkedIn take on social audio and they see that this program is happening every day. Like, they're planting a flag, and I think it's going to really pay dividends. So if you're into the audio space, definitely don't sleep on social audio.
It definitely pays to be an early adopter for sure. I remember when I first got on Clubhouse, and this was back when people had like just hundreds or thousands of followers. It was not, where it is today with people with hundreds of thousands and millions of followers. And I was watching very carefully to see who was planting their flag and who was spending a lot of time. And then you fast forward, 3 months, 6 months, even a year. And it's like, look at the people who really made a name for themselves because they went early, they went all in, and now they're known, in that space. So excellent point, Michael. Thank you for sharing that. And I see we have Morgan here. Hey, Morgan.
Hi, both. So I have some very quick and early thoughts on what game rooms might be and why they exist. So I could share those. They're very early thoughts because we don't know what the implementation will be. So treat this as speculative. But as some background, we have seen recently, but I think going back quite far, people on Clubhouse coming up with their own kinds of games as a thing to do together socially. And this is really part of the idea that Clubhouse is not only a place for holding talks, but increasingly a place to socialize and make friends. And of course, games are ways for you to do things together that are a bit more easy and lightweight than coming up with a talk or inviting a guest or doing something that's more show-like. So we've definitely seen that. So, for example, somebody put on Squid Games recently, which was a more produced show-like thing, but was also a game. And another very simple one we saw recently was in a social room, which was somebody would play the first 30 seconds of a song, and people in the room had to guess in the room chat the name of the artist and the track as quickly as possible. And there were little social rewards for doing that. So this is a way of supporting something that users are already doing. So there's that thought. But I think one of the main roles for Clubhouse here is a little bit less trying to attract people onto the platform to play the games as the aim. It's more coming up with again, these sort of lightweight icebreakers or ways to socialize that help you, again, build relationships. So you will, I suppose one of the tricks for Clubhouse is to not only follow people, but to become mutuals with them and talk to them in social rooms. And I think this is going to help with that. So yeah, it's the other way of thinking about it is quite interesting. Is not to think of rooms as containers for talking exactly, but they're also containers for doing things together. And playing games is almost a version 1 of that. You can imagine other things that you might be able to do together. And it seems like this is a good place to start to explore what that might be. So you're not so much there to listen to a talk or put your hand up and take part in a podcast recording. You can do that too, but you also have this other use where maybe you're there with people you already know, and you're trying to find ways to spend time with each other and do something together. So again, I don't know what that will end up looking like, but it's an interesting, different use, I suppose. I see Michael has his hand up. I'd love to hear what he makes of that.
Oh yeah, thanks, Morgan. It just seems like social audio gives anybody an opportunity to add a voice channel to any sort of online group activity. So yeah, to the point of games, like I hosted a New Year's Eve celebration for the United States and all related time zones. And at one point in between celebrating midnight, we would get on to, I don't remember what the service was. It's an online game portal where basically whoever wanted to on stage could join the game and play together and talk with each other. But then there was also a link we could put at the top of the space so anybody in the audience could just watch us play the game, and they could keep up with the score live and everything. And it was really pretty phenomenal. And, so there's lots of opportunities for games, but then, Clubhouse has actually hosted a number of watch parties as well for Netflix shows and other things where you have a bunch of people in the room and they all hit play on their Netflix at the same time, and they are watching and listening and talking about it together. So yeah, just lots of opportunities to add a voice channel to online gatherings. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.